Good morning, everybody. Today we're still reading. I'm going to be reading Lois Lowry's Number of the Stars. And Brooke, what are you reading today? What is it? Hat full of Zeus. Better go back to school, kid, and keep practicing your reading. All right, so chapter 12. Where was Mama? Mr. Rosen tripped on the loose step outside the kitchen door. His wife grasped his arm, and he regained his balance. "It's very dark," Mama whispered as they stood in the yard with their blankets and bundles of food gathered in their arms. "And we can't use any kind of light. I'll go first. I know the way very well, and you follow me. Try not to stumble over the tree roots in the path. Feel carefully with your feet. The path is uneven. And be very, very quiet." Right, Brooke? She added unnecessarily. The night was quiet too. A slight breeze moved in the tops of the trees, and from across the meadow came the sound of the sea's movement, which was a constant sound here and had always been. But no birds called or cried here now in the night, and the cow slept silently in the barn, and the kitten slept upstairs in Christy's arms. There were stars here and there dotting the sky, along with thin clouds, but there was no moon. Anne-Marie shivered, standing at the foot of the steps. "Come," Mama murmured as she moved away from the house. One by one, the Rosens turned and hugged Anne-Marie silently. Ellen came to her last. The two girls held each other. "I'll be back someday," Ellen whispered fiercely. "I promise." "I know you will," Anne-Marie whispered back, holding her friend tightly. Then they were gone, Mama and the Rosens, and Anne-Marie was alone. She went into the house, crying suddenly, and closed the door against the night. The lid of the casket was closed again. Now the room was empty. There was no sign of the people who had sat there for those hours. Anne-Marie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She opened the dark curtains and the windows. She curled once more in the rocker, trying to relax. She traced their route in her mind. She knew the old path, too. Well, not as well as her mother, who had followed it almost every day for her childhood with the dog scampering along behind. But Anne-Marie, she had often walked to town and back, using that very way. And she remembered the turns and the twisted trees whose gnarled roots pushed the earth now and then into knotted clumps. And she remembered the thick bushes which often flowered in early summer. She walked with them in her mind, feeling the way through the darkness. It would take them, she thought, about half an hour to reach the place where Uncle Henrik was waiting with his boat. Mama would leave them there, pausing a moment, but no more, for one final hug, and then she would turn and come home. It would be faster for Mama alone, with no need to wait, as the Rosens, who were unfamiliar with the path, slowly felt their way along. Mama would hurry, sure-footed, back to her children. The clock in the hall struck once. It was 2:30 in the morning. Her mother would be home in an hour, Anne-Marie decided. She rocked gently back and forth in the old chair. Yes, Mama would be home by 3:30. She thought of Papa back in Copenhagen alone. He would be awake too. He would be wishing he could have come, but knowing too that he must come and go as always to the corner store for the newspaper and to his office when the morning came. Now he would be afraid for them, and he would be watching the clock, waiting for word that the Rosens were safe, that Mama and the girls were here at the farm, starting a new day with the sun shining through the kitchen as they ate their breakfast of cream and oatmeal. It was harder for the ones who were waiting, Anne-Marie thought. Less danger, but more fear. She yawned and her head nodded. Soon she fell asleep. But it was a sleep as thin as the night clouds, and her dreams came and went like the stars. Light woke her. It was not really morning, not yet. It was only the first hint of a slightly lightening sky, a pale gleam at the edge of the meadow, a sign that far away somewhere, to the east, where Sweden was, that morning was coming. Dawn would creep across the Swedish farmland and the coast, and it would wash little Denmark with light and move across the North Sea and then wake up Norway. Anne-Marie blinked in confusion, sitting up, remembering after a moment why she was here. Something was not right. The pale light on the horizon, but it should still be dark, it should still be night. She stood up stiffly, stretching her legs. She went to the hall clock. It was well past 4. Where was Mama? Perhaps she had come home and not wanted to wake Anne-Marie and just gone to bed herself. Surely that was it. Mama must have been exhausted. She'd been up all night, had made the very dangerous journey to the boat, and then returned to the dark woods, wanting only to go to sleep. Quickly, Anne-Marie went to the narrow staircase. The door to the bedroom where she had slept with Ellen was wide open, and there were 2 beds, neatly made, covered with old quilts, but clearly empty. Beside it, Uncle Henrik's door was open too, and his bed was also unused and empty. Despite her worry, Anne-Marie smiled slightly when she saw some of Henrik's clothes crumpled in a chair and a pair of shoes lying on the floor. Yes, he really does need a wife, she said, imitating her mama. The door to the other bedroom, the one Christy and Mama were sharing, was closed. Quietly, not wanting to wake them, Anne-Marie pushed it open. The kitten's ears moved, standing straight up. Its eyes opened and it yawned, and it pried itself out of Christy's arms, stretched, and then jumped to the floor and came to Anne-Marie. It rubbed itself against her leg and purred. Christy sighed and turned in her sleep, one arm free. There was no one else in the bed. Anne-Marie moved quickly to the window, which overlooked the clearing that led to the path entrance. The light outside was dim. She peered through the dimness, trying to see, looking for an opening in the trees where the path began, looking, waiting, hoping for Mama to see her hurrying home. After a second, she saw a shape, something unfamiliar, something that had not been there the day before, a dark shape, no more than a blurred heap at the beginning of the path. Anne-Marie squinted. She forced her eyes to understand what she was seeing. She needed to understand, but she didn't want to understand. The shape moved, and she knew what it was. What was it?
Mama.
It was her own Mama lying on the earth. And that's the end of chapter 12. Make sure you do your questions. There's not actually all that much left, so we'll have to figure out how it's all going to come together in the end.